Hello once again, everyone. I know it's been so long since you all have heard from me that, I figured I'd come back up here. So this time it is my deep honor to introduce to you the Reverend Mark DeVries. And I was just very clearly corrected that no one calls him Reverend DeVries. So it is Mark, right? We're good? Okay. Mark is the founder and president of Ministry Architects, the co-founder of Ministry Incubators, and the Center for Youth Ministry Training, and the founder of Justice Industries. He served as the associate pastor for youth and their families at First Presbyterian Church in Nashville, Tennessee for 28 years, a tenure which just slightly beats the average for most associate ministers who work with youth, or so I've been told. He is the author of a dozen or so books, including Sustainable Youth Ministry, Family-Based Youth Ministry, and is the co-author of Sustainable Children's Ministry and Sustainable Young Adult Ministry. Mark has offered ministry training and consulting across the United States in more than a dozen countries, working with a wide variety of denominations as well as non-denominational churches and gatherings. He has taught courses or been a guest lecturer at more than 20 colleges and seminaries, and he is an old friend of the Youth Ministry Institute here at YDS. Mark is the husband of Susan, the father of 3 grown children, the grandfather of 4 grandchildren and 3 foster grandchildren. Mark, we are so beyond delighted to have you with us this morning and this afternoon. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Reverend Olds, for that delicious introduction. Okay, I am thrilled to be with you all. I'll tell you how I'd like for us to start. I think most folks are done eating, and because this is a bit of a youth ministry thing, I wonder if you could. I know I'm going to ask you to do something after dinner. I want you to stand up, and I want you to find somebody from a different table to be friends with, okay? Or pretend to be friends with. You don't have to like them. It's okay. All right? Just one person. Don't get carried away. I want you to have one partner. Here's what I'd like you to do. With your partner, I want you to use this graphic up here of the 7 matchsticks, all right? And I would like for you to describe your youth ministry using one of those matchsticks as your metaphor, and then explain why, all right? My youth group is like the 3rd one from the left, right? Okay, you just pick the one that's most like your youth ministry, and I want you to just go deep, share your feelings. You've got 30 seconds apiece. Go. Okay, question number 2, I want you to use the same graphic, and you're going to answer, how are you doing? Or as John Wesley would famously ask, how is it with your soul? As one of those matchsticks. Okay, again, 30 seconds apiece. Go. Okay, we'll just do a little quick processing. Did you notice, 2 or 3 of you would be curious to hear any patterns you noticed, any connections you noticed between those answers. What do you got? That speaks volumes, yes. Okay. We don't know where the youth are. Okay, and so what matchstick did you use? This one over here. Could be this one over here. We don't know. It's one or the other, right? No, I said we burned out, but we're on our way back. We're coming on back. Okay, I love your attitude. One more. What'd you observe?
We both had the same matchstick for both questions.
Fascinating. You've just found your soulmate.
No, I just meant her first question had the same matchstick as her second question, and mine
Oh, y'all didn't agree.
Well, we were still, yeah, we were close.
You were close.
We're the two flames, but I'm just saying, I thought it was interesting that our sticks stayed the same.
Yeah, there's a connection, but a lot of times between how we're doing and how our ministry's doing. Right? Okay. Turn to your friend and say, wow, this is going to be awesome. And then go sit back down. So I have an aspirational outline for our conversation today. Here's how it's going to go. We may get through it all. We may not. Who knows? But I want to if we divided this into thirds, the first third, I want to just identify what are the patterns that keep churches stuck. All right? Not that I mean, you may not have noticed, but I am from Tennessee. I sound like I'm from Connecticut, but I'm actually from Tennessee. And so it may not happen in Connecticut that churches get stuck. But enough said. So I have a couple pictures of stuck things just, because a picture's worth 1,000 words. I love this picture. It just as a picture of stuckness. Do you notice her expression? Can you see her expression? What does that tell you? It's okay. Probably how come? It's not her car. You got to believe that. Now, y'all, it's going to take you a second to wrap your head around this one, but there's clearly a story behind it. I don't know. I was just looking for my pencil, and then the chair was my necklace. I don't know what happened here. You got the principal, the lunch lady, the maintenance guy with a hacksaw 3 inches from the kid's neck. And, right? Gotta love stuck stuff. Okay. I'm going to show you a little video, and then I'm going to give you a little time to process. But the question I want to have looping in your head is, how does this remind you of the church?
Whoa, that's not good.
Oh, I don't need this. I'm already late.
Somebody will come. Anybody out there?
Do you have a phone?
No. Sorry. Somebody! Hello? There are 2 people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something?
Help!
I don't believe this. You gotta be kidding me.
I'm gonna cry.
Well, there's not enough left to do, is there?
Hello? Hey, don't worry about it. I'll fix it in a second.
He said he could fix it. All right. All right. That's more like it. He says he can fix it.
Okay, you have 42.7 seconds at your table to talk about connections you see between this and the church. Go. Okay, we'll come back together. Just, again, a couple little soundings. What connections did you see between the escalator and the church? What connections do you see between the escalator and the church? We get stuck and we don't move. That's a pretty good summary. What else? Yeah.
And we're waiting for someone to come and fix us and save us. And here comes along this guy who could be the pastor. He's going to fix everything.
Yeah.
Starts off good, and then he stalls.
Don't worry about a thing. I'll fix it in a second. Boom, I got it. Yeah. Good. What else? Yeah. Oh, so good. Okay, let's just say it together, like in call and response. What's the answer? Right? There is a famous NFL quarterback who said, life and a 300-pound linebacker teach the same lesson. You will be punished if you do not move. Now, let me tell you, most of our churches are beautifully designed for cutting-edge ministry in 1965. And we have not moved since. And we're wondering, why in the world? I mean, we're doing exactly what we did before. Why is it not working? Because we're doing what we always have done. And the world has dramatically shifted. Some people say that this is a time in our history not unlike the arrival of the printing press. Some would say this is the Gutenberg moment. That in the same way that it's oversimplistic, but the Reformation would not have been possible without the printing press, right? A new technology accessed by a young pastoral leader, right, who upset the status quo. A disruptive innovator. We are now in a time when our whole models for thinking, of communicating, have shifted in the span of 15, 20 years. Just for fun, let's just do a quick survey. How many of you remember a time when there was no such thing as email? How many of you remember a time when there was no such thing as the World Wide Web? Right? You remember when to look something up, you didn't get Siri, you went to your Encyclopedia Britannica that was sold to you, right? One of my favorite phrases that my friend Ken Dean taught me is this Latin phrase, solvitur ambulando. Any Latin experts in here? Anybody will admit to being a Latin expert, right? But you can pick it apart, right? Ambulando, yeah, like moving, walking, right? Solvitur, we're solve it. We're going to solve the problem while we're moving. Standing, it's like when you're in a sailboat. If you try to turn, standing still, you're dead in the water. You got to be moving to make a turn, and most have stopped anything close to movement, right? We don't have to have all the answers. We don't have to have all the lights green to start moving, right? Okay. So I'm just going to quickly whip through a few examples of things we hear in stuck churches. The first one is the answer to every problem starts with the phrase, we just. Right? Can anybody give me an example of that? We just need to. If we just got more kids, think of all the problems that could be solved with 100 junior high boys in a room. If we just had more kids, okay, what else? If we just had some cash, that's what Jesus said. If I just had some cash, I could make a difference in this world. What else? If we just, if we just had some volunteers, if we just had a good youth worker, right? If we could get rid of it, right? So I had been at my church in Nashville for about 5 years. We were at a pretty stuck place. And so, of course, when you're in a stuck place, you're inviting the we justs to come out of the woodwork. And one of the elders, a woman in our church, wonderful, wonderful, love her so much, she came to me and she said, Mark, honey, I just think if we just have some more cute boys and cute girls, forget the ugly ones, the cute ones will solve our problem, right? I love this quote from H.L. Mencken. For every problem, there is a solution, which is simple, neat, and wrong. A few questions that we hear in stuck churches. The first one is, can you just give us some good ideas? Listen, y'all, I have great news for you. You do not need another good idea. You just need to operationalize the lousy ideas you've got. Now, I know about the power of lousy ideas. I live in Nashville, the home of country. People make a lot of money from lousy ideas. We could do a whole series on country music song lyrics. Yeah, not even going to go there, but I could. We have a thing in Nashville now called the Boulevard Bolt. It happens on Thanksgiving morning, 7 o'clock. Here's how it happened. There's an Episcopal church, a Baptist church, and a Jewish synagogue. They went into a bar. They met a lawyer. So they got together, and they said, let's do something for homeless ministry in our community. It's beautiful. So they went through all the normal ideas. Some yahoo said, I know, how about on Thanksgiving morning at 7 o'clock, we let people give us $50 a piece to run 5 miles. Thanksgiving morning. Can you imagine the conversation around the table? Yeah, that's a great idea. Everybody's going to come out Thanksgiving morning. Sure, that's going to happen. But about $500,000 later, over 20 years, this thing has invested in our community. It didn't take a good idea. It just took a lousy idea well executed. And I have to tell you, in the church, we are much bigger on ideas than we are on execution. We would, as soon as something gets hard, then we say, well, we probably had a bad idea. No, it's not your idea. You're just tired. Just dumb persistence. Use a stupid idea with enthusiasm. That is a hashtag for youth ministry. Right? Here's the next one. Can you keep us from failing? Man, this is the trap that keeps churches stuck. A church that refuses to fail is a church that has chosen to die. And most churches are so worried about getting it wrong, they will try nothing that makes them look. Some of you teach Sunday school, and I hope I'm not talking about you, but teach kids in Sunday school, and you would rather say, instead of doing those crazy ideas that come in your curriculum book, like bring in a live goat, you would never do that. Instead of that, you say, well, you know what we're going to do is we'll just have everybody in the room read a verse of the chapter, and then we can all share how that relates to our lives. Let's do that. Because it's a little too scary to be foolish enough to try something that kids are going to go, well, that idea didn't work. If your kids are not saying, you come up with the craziest ideas and most of them don't work, you're probably not trying hard enough. All right? If you think of the organizations in our time that are on the cutting edge, they have institutionalized innovation. So places like Apple or Google, those places say, we have got to fail, and we got to fail fast, and we got to fail often. The church is terrified of that. In fact, create books. In my denomination, we have a book of order that keeps us from getting it wrong. Methodists have a book of discipline, right? Some of you freewheelers, you just have the Bible. Do you understand how different we are? Oh, this one. So we've done probably, 700 or 800 youth ministry assessments, all over the country. And almost every church, we hear this. You don't understand. We're special. Our church is different. Now, the truth is, every church has about 5% pure weirdness. And I'll give them that 5%. But when I drill down and I say, okay, what do you mean weird? I mean, what do you mean you are special? They say, people in our town, in our church, they don't RSVP for events. Weird. They'll say things like, our kids, you can finish this sentence for me, right? Our kids are so busy. Oh, weird. We have kids that come from all kinds of different high schools. In our church, kids aren't coming out of the woodwork. By the time kids get their driver's license, they stop coming. Now, all I'm saying is we can't explain away a less than thriving program by the factors that are present in every thriving program. Those are obstacles that have to be overcome. They're just not special and unique. I call this the trap of terminal uniqueness. We just explain away our lack of trying because, well, you can't expect me to do much because kids are so busy, right? Okay, here's the next one. This is controversial. Can you help my church understand it's not about numbers? Now, if you want to get a group of youth workers to nod like bobbleheads in unison, say this, not about numbers. That's right. Mm-hmm. Sure, not about numbers. You're right, Bob. Mm-hmm. That's right. Not about numbers. Not about numbers. Well, I'd like to share a little parable with you. Parable is a story of something that never happened. I mean, there's more sophisticated theological definitions, but that's fundamentally the truth, okay? So I have these 3 children. That part happened. Adam, Debbie, and Lee. Adam, we thought his name should have been respelled after he started school to ADD, A-M. He's just sort of this bounce off the walls kind of character. And he's got his next youngest sister is Debbie. She's the good one. And then and Lee is the artist. And so I say we go to Disney World. I say the kids be back at the flagpole at 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock comes. I got Debbie, I got Lee, I got Susan, got no Adam. Have y'all heard this story? So I say to Susan, I say, well, maybe it's 9:05. I guess it's time to go. And what does she say? Can't leave without Adam. I say, honey, we have 2 very quality children here. Let's just work with the ones that come. Can we let that sing for just a second? Let's just work with the ones that come. And Susan would say, well, but see, we have children. And I would say, don't you know it's not about numbers? And she would say, well, except for that third one happens to be ours. Most of us, our traditions vary in all kind of different ways, but most of us have a ritual, a sacrament, a tradition where we welcome children into our church. Sometimes the congregation takes vows for them. And it's not in our book, but here's what's happening. We're saying, dibs on the baby. That one's ours. That one's ours, not if they keep coming to our programs. Because, if they stop coming to our programs, we should just purge the rolls. How many times have you heard that? Well, we got this dead weight on our rolls. Often those are the very kids that need us the most, right? Y'all may remember this. Jesus had these guys that he hung out with, and he had a nickname for them. What was his nickname? Sons of Thunder, that proves that he worked with junior high boys. Those were James and John. What about the whole group? What did he call them? What was his nickname? Disciples. He had another little nickname for them, just one syllable. It's 2 after 10. The 12. Hey, Jesus was with the 12, right? Jesus knew how many he had. Jesus, don't you understand? It's not about numbers. No, it's for my 12. 1, 2, yeah. Oh, missing Judas. Judas, get back over, right? And the other part, the other significant theological argument I like to make is, you know, there is a book in the Bible called Numbers. It's not about stupid numbers, but there's some numbers that really matter. And we need to know where our kids are. We need to know who our kids are. It's not unusual when we do an assessment, we'll say, how many kids do you have? And it's not unusual for us to hear some version of, well, it all depends on what you mean by kid. I don't care. Whatever you'd like to, however you define kid is okay with me, but how many are yours? How many do you have dibs on? How many do you have spiritual responsibility for? And then this last one, can you just get me out of political games? We could spend some time on this. Do y'all know what's right next to or very near the word politics in the dictionary? Polite. You know, there's some studies done of people who were fired for office politics, and they drilled down. Wall Street Journal had a really interesting article about this. They drilled down to see what that meant, and ultimately it came down to a word that's very popular in youth ministry. It boiled down to relationships. If I do a class on sexuality with junior high kids, and they start asking very explicit questions, and I don't call my pastor on the way home from that meeting, that's not polite. How come? Yeah, he's going to get a call. He's going to get a call, and there's only one species of creature that is less, that responds worse to surprise than horses, and that is senior pastors. It's true. So you can say, oh, you're just playing politics. No, I'm just being polite to my friend who I care about, right? There's a whole thing we could do on that, but just so you know, we're seeing that as a stopgap. There's also a pattern that we call the superstar mentality. You know, if we just get the perfect rock star youth worker. And a lot of churches have a memory of a rock star somewhere in their past 20 years, and that keeps them hooked on the crack of looking for another one. Usually those rock stars stay for, about 18 months. Everything expands, and they have all these kids coming in, and as soon as they leave, what happens? Falls apart like a house of cards. But we believe if we get one of those and we can keep them, that we'll win. Okay, I'm going to skip this video. I know you're disappointed about it. Also, as we think about stuck churches, it's helpful to kind of have a look at what does it cost to actually have a sustainable, thriving, healthy youth ministry. So these numbers I'm going to share with you, I've just got some ratios. We're not saying this is what it ought to be. We're just saying this is kind of what it is in our. This is not refereed research, academically refereed research. This is just, we've done about 800 of these, we put it in a blender, and we've come up with these ratios, right? It's like a contractor who builds a house in a particular neighborhood, and you can say, it's going to cost about $140 a square foot in this neighborhood, right? That's what we're looking at. So I've got 5 or 6 characteristics here. The first one is about $1,500 a kid. So if you want to have, so this is the annual budget, including salary or program budget. So if you want to have 10 kids in your youth ministry, how much is that going to cost you? $15,000, all right? If you want to have 100 kids in your youth ministry, what's it going to cost you? Yeah, some of you lack confidence in that answer, but 100, yeah, math and theology people. One of these things is not like the other. So, yeah, so you get the idea. Now, is it possible to do it for free? Well, sure, it happens, and so do unicorns. They happen sometimes. It's probably not exactly a unicorn. Usually when we have seen it happen for free, it's because someone is working like a staff person but not getting paid, right? So we'll take it out of the church context and talk about the school context. Let's just say it costs $10,000 a year for a student to be funded at a school, all right? What if the people in the school pray really hard? What does it cost? About $10,000 a year. But what if they're really gifted teachers? About $10,000 a year, right? It's just helpful to get a sense of this is generally what it costs. Often, because we understand that there's a cost associated, we often will pour guilt on our congregation and say, you know, if we were trying harder, if we just had a better idea, instead of saying, if someone were committing 10 hours a week to this, I bet we'd have some kids, right? Here's the next one. The 1 to 50 ratio. This is the trigger point at which you need a full-time youth staff person. Most of our churches now are not at this place. So let's just suppose your church's goal is to have 25. How many staff people do you need? You need a half a person, either this half or this half, right? Either one. So it's to figure out what your aspirations are and say, okay, if we want to go from 0 kids to 5 kids, if we get somebody 5 or 10 hours a week, that's a great start, right? Here's the next one, the 10% rule. The number of kids in a congregation tends to settle at about 10% of the worshiping congregation. When I say worshiping congregation, I'm thinking the average worship attendance on a Sunday morning. Does that make sense? So you probably have, let's just say you have 50 on a Sunday morning, you probably have 100 that are involved. Does that make sense? But I'm working with 50, not 50 is the number, the ratio number I'm looking for. So if you've got about 50 in worship, about how many of those would be teenagers, would you imagine? About 5 kids. Even if they're not in the youth group, even if you don't have a youth group, right? And often, what I've found is that discipleship happens in a really beautiful way with young people who don't have a youth ministry experience. They just have to sing in the dang adult choir. They get to work in the nursery. A lot of times, what we've done is we've had, junior high boys, particularly misbehaving. We'd send them down to help in the first grade Sunday school class. And guess what happened? The kids think they're awesome. The adults think they're awesome. So vertical relationships have a way of growing kids up. If they're connected to kids younger and people older, they tend to grow this way. When we lock kids into this, so this is the way the Babylonian captivity of youth ministry is, let's get a bunch of kids in a room and talk about the evils of peer pressure. You want to deal with peer pressure? Put kids with a bunch of adults. So horizontal relationships keeps kids stunted. You put 4 junior high boys in a room, and they act the square root of the youngest one's age, right? But you put them and you multiply the generations, it's an invitation. It's a foundation for growth, right? Here's the next one. The 20% ceiling. If you throw more money and more staff, you can usually grow from about 10 to 20% pretty consistently. Once you get to 20 though, so let's just say you have 100 in worship, once you hit 20 kids, you're going to hit a ceiling. Now, it's not to say it never goes past it, but a lot of times what will happen is you'll have this really cool retreat with 30 kids on it, and everybody's excited about it, and we're thinking, man, we're going to have the greatest youth group in the world because we got 30 kids, and it comes back down to 20. It's like there's this water level. Now, if you blow past it, we'll all sing the doxology with you. But if you find yourself stuck at that 20% level, understand that you're right in the normal, right? Here's the next one, a kind of a 1-to-5 ratio. You want to have at least one kind of hands-on volunteer in relational ministry with students for about every 5 kids. Now, the curious piece is that we would love to see every kid have 5 adults in their lives. Now, they don't have to all be youth leaders, but what would happen if we put the fork in the kids' hands, and the one thing they learn in your church is how to get relationships with adults. And you just give them a challenge and say, listen, we got a fund, and if you can go have coffee with 5 adults in our church, we'll give you $50. That'd be a great investment. Everybody will love it, everybody will have fun, and I'm confident you'll get back 10 times that amount, right? But a 1-to-5 ratio. And then this rule of 30, when groups get beyond the size of about 30, there tends to be a ceiling there as well, speed bump. So if you find your group having been stuck at this 30 plateau, and let's just say you got 500 in worship, you got the capacity to grow, you probably want to think about splitting them into 2 groups. I don't mean 2 small groups and they all meet together for no, I mean 2 entirely different groups. Okay, plenty that we could process there. To move out of this kind of stuck place, I want to suggest we think about a systems approach. That we think, some of you are familiar with family systems theory. I want to oppose sort of family systems theory with regular, sort of more traditional approach to counseling, which is when you have an addict in your home, where does all the attention go? To the addict. It's like, and so family systems theory sort of says, it's like you're tightening the knot on them by all the focus you're putting on the addict. Fix the addict, fix the addict. All the focus is there. Family systems theory says, listen, change the system around that person, and they're more likely to change. Take the focus off of the identified patient and work on bringing your joyful, non-anxious presence, right? I want to just give you, we use this image of the dance floor. Most youth ministry trains youth leaders to be good dancers. So they have good skills to lead youth programs, but they're not so good at building the dance floor. Dancing skills are like leading small groups, relational ministry, creative programs, that sort of stuff. The dance floor is stuff like making sure you have a list of kids, making sure you got a calendar, making sure you've got volunteers in place. So most of the training is all above the dance, So I want to give you just a little picture of how that might look. So just want to compare. You'll see ice and you'll see the dancer, all right? So just watch. I just want you to compare. Okay, you got the dance floor. It's pretty boring down there, right? Oh. This is what happens to a lot of youth workers. Because they know how to dance, they just don't know how to take care of that dance floor. And so with the little time we've got left, I want to make that practical for you. I think in your folder, I promise I'll give this back. You have a sheet that looks like this. And what we've done is we've tried to say, let's take this system language and give it some more specificity, right? So what we've done is, because when we would talk about these, we talk about this sort of systems approach, and people would say, what do you mean a system, right? And so I've tried to define, here are 17 different systems. I'd like to say some of these are optional, some of these are, the truth is, it's like your plumbing system in your house. You don't have to have a plumbing system, but it's probably not a great house if you don't. You don't have to have a roofing system. You don't have to have an electrical system. You don't have to have an HVAC, right? Most churches don't have these systems, but people get really mad when they're not in place. Like a visitor follow-up process. You know what happens when people come to this? Nobody welcomes them. There's no place for them to park. Everything says reserved for the pastor's wife, right? Or spouse, sorry. Anyway. What I'd like us to do is, come on. I want you to do a little workshopping with these systems. In the left-hand column, I want you to give your ministry a grade. Give yourself an A, B, C, D, or F. E is not a grade, okay? Just like a report card, right? And then in the right-hand column, I want you to rank it 1, 2, 3. How important is it in your mind? So a 1 is, this is absolutely essential. A 3 is, we could do without that for a few years, all right? Okay, so I'm going to give you 2 minutes to do a little self-assessment. Left-hand column is your regular grades, A, B, C, and your right-hand column is how important you think it is, 1, 2, 3. Questions? Okay, 2 minutes, starts now. Okay. Some of you are finishing that up, but I wonder if in the process of kind of reading through these, or scanning through them, I didn't really give you time to read, if some questions bubbled up like, I'm not sure I understand what this one is. Any questions you've got about that list? Great. Just one. Which of the items on the list did you all identify as the most important, like your number ones? What kind of things did you? You named all of them as most important. Oh, that's our problem, yeah. You named, number 7. What was that?
The staff development system.
Okay, having a way to keep your staff healthy, right? Yeah. That is so often neglected. And this work, let's just acknowledge, it is heartbreaking. It's a suffer calling. And there is, in addition to this, to the exhaustion and the, just carrying the load, there's also the emotional load that we're carrying with kids, right? So a process for caring for staff, or I tell you who's doing a really marvelous job with that. I know a lot of groups have cohorts and things, but there's a guy named Mark Ostreicher with the Youth Cartel who does these 1-year cohorts, and I've been a provocateur in one of these, but people talk about how they get their feet under them, right, at those things, but being intentional about our health. Yeah. What else did you put as a number 1? The volunteer system. We could do a whole session on the volunteer system. In fact, if you'd like, when we're done, we can do a 3-minute quick. I have a bet that we have a process for recruiting volunteers. And the bet is, if you work this process for 6 months and you don't have all the volunteers you need, we'll give you $100, no questions asked. Usually, recruiting volunteers is a technical problem. We just have to work a process to do it. And I'll be happy to kind of walk that through with you at the end of our time, if you want to. Okay, So you get the idea. I want to just give you a little bit more context around family systems thinking. So in family systems thinking, you move from content thinking, in other words, we've got an addict and that's causing chaos in our house, into system thinking, which is how am I going to not allow this behavior to control our home, right? How do I bring my whole self, not let this craziness make me crazy, right? Let me give you I'm going to give you another, this is not a parable, this actually happened. Susan and I have been married 40 years. For the first 10 or 15 years, we had a chronic issue in our marriage. And Susan would have defined that as my lateness. That was our content issue, right? And here's how it would go. I would be at the church serving the Alpha and the Omega there in my office. And I would call my beloved and I'd say, honey, I'm on my way home. We got 3 little kids that she's been corralling for a while. And so I say, I'm on my way home. But as I move to the parking lot, you all know what happens. Somebody needs me. One of God's sheep. And this is in a time when there were devices on our desks that had the little swirly things that plugged in. You didn't carry a phone. There was no such thing as a cell phone. So I'm out in the parking lot, helplessly serving one of God's sheep, ministering holy love, helping people with their marriage crisis. And I would come home, and my pagan wife would not rejoice in the Lord always. No, she would be unhappy with me for being just 45 minutes late. So I'd come home, we'd have a side order attention with dinner. It was ice, ice, baby. It'd take 2 or 3 days to recover, and then it'd take 4 or 5 days for me to do it again. And so we had this little pattern, and we had meetings about it. Like we'd have family meetings, we'd have Susan and I would have, we'd schedule, we got to talk about this. Yeah, we do, because, you need to become a little more spiritual and receive the gift of your beloved, right? We're a little bit of a, juggernaut on this. Well, this goes on for about 10 years. We've focused on the content issue and done our best to solve the content issue, with creative ideas like leave early, stuff like that. So 15 years into this deal, I come home, and I don't know if y'all are familiar with the Greek word ambush, but I walk in the door, and Susan just stages a one-woman intervention. And she just mauls me, wraps me up in this big bear hug, plants a sloppy kiss on me, and whispers something flirtatious in my ear. Now, if you want to see change happen in a system, bring your joyful, self-differentiated, non-anxious presence. So there she was, this brilliant family systems theorist, and I just figure she has forgotten how to tell time, and I'm just going with it. Like, what's not to love about this specimen, of course, right? So she, we have a nice dinner, the kids enjoy the dinner, there's no tension. So the next morning I'm leaving, and I say, baby, I liked it, but what was that thing? What was that thing last night? And she said, I realized I was giving you all the power of letting you control the climate of our home. And I didn't want to do that anymore, and I figured I'd do something about it. I think it worked pretty good, don't you? Now, I'm sure still late, but all of a sudden, the dancing in a baggie, the reactivity, all of that, your craziness makes me crazy, all of that defensiveness, right? That's this whole, I love that picture of just, that's working on the system. And you're not really fixing pieces out here as much as you are bringing your whole self, not cutting off and not getting enmeshed. You're just staying in it, staying in it in love, right? So Paul was actually a pretty good family systems theorist without knowing it. Y'all probably know Philippians 4:4. Anybody know Philippians 4:4? Come on. Anybody? You sing it at camp, I'm guessing. I'll start it. Rejoice in the Lord always. That's verse 4. You probably didn't know until I shared it with you that verse 2 and 3 comes right before verse 4. See how that works in the Bible? Listen to this. I plead with Euodia and I plead with Syntyche to agree with each other in the Lord. What's happening? This is an ancient Middle Eastern thing. You probably wouldn't understand it. It was a church fight. You have to sort of get back into it. Maybe with a good archaeological study you could understand this culture. They're having a church fight. Probably Syntyche forgot to wash the dishes after the potluck, and right? They're having a church fight. Now, Paul does not address the topic that they're fighting about. His only solution comes in verse 4. Rejoice in the Lord. You know what Syntyche and Euodia said at that point? They went. He said, again, let me say it again. Rejoice. Right? Rejoice in the Lord always. Right? What he's saying is there has to be a level of buoyancy in order to deal with these kind of conflicts. And a lot of times when we're at our worst is when we're trying to solve these conflicts, right? Just want you to get this notion of if you can just bring your joyful, non-anxious presence and be persistent and say, you know what I want to do in this next year? You got no kids in church? I want us to have 3 kids here that feel like this is a place they are loved like nowhere else in town. And I'm going to do something every week to try to move in that direction, right? Okay, we are at the point of landing the jet and moving toward questions. So we're going to do a little Q&A time. And Jill, do you want to moderate that? Do you want me to moderate that? Okay. Comments, questions, tacky gestures.
Would you review your volunteer system?
Is that okay? Can we just do the volunteer recruiting system? Is that okay, Jill? Okay. Here we go. I will come back to you. Here it is. I want a couple of you to answer each of these questions. Trying to do youth ministry without a team is like give me a little metaphor there. A simile, actually. Yeah. It's like rowing a boat without a paddle. Great. Let's do another one. Saying I don't have time to recruit volunteers is like it's like saying I don't have time to eat. Sometimes, very similar, I like to say, it's like saying I don't have time to stop and get gas. Right? Well, we won't tend to this one right now. I love this quote from Thomas Edison. Opportunity is missed by most people because it's dressed in overalls and looks a lot like work. Most of what we're going to talk about for volunteer recruiting is about perspiration, not inspiration. And I'm going to walk you through the perspiration process. Here's the way we tend to do recruiting. If Jesus did recruiting this way, and verily, Jesus saw Peter busy with his day job and said reluctantly unto him, listen, man, I need you to do me a favor. Nobody's responded to my note in the bulletin, and I can't get anybody to help us with this thing I'm putting together. I don't know, whatever happened to commitment. But hey, I just need you to spend some time with me once a month, you and Nathaniel and Judas. You could do it on a rotating basis. Look, I know you're busy, but if you do this, I'll definitely owe you one. If not, we're canceling the Last Supper. This is the way we do recruiting. We think the best time to recruit somebody is in the parking lot on Sunday morning when they're hungry and tired and exhausted from the week. And we think, well, I don't want to bother them. I'll just get them on Sunday morning. What you'll get on Sunday morning is no. That's what you'll get on Sunday morning. But this tends to be, we put these announcements in the bulletin, and the story you tell is the story you get. So if the story, here's the narrative. The narrative, just see if you can pick up the subtle story underneath. We will not be having youth group tonight or any time in the foreseeable future because we don't have anyone in our church who cares enough about our kids to volunteer. Thank you for your support. Right? There's a narrative, right? The narrative is nobody in this church cares. People will live into that. And the narrative is we don't have a leader at the helm who can recruit volunteers, right? A few tips that we've realized. So I consider inviting people to serve through the bulletin as basically just a pedophile invitation. When Jesus called his disciples, he said, hey, I got a sign-up sheet on the bulletin board down at the bottom of the mountain. Just any of you that want to follow me, just put your name on there. No, how did he do it? He saw Simon and Andrew, the brother of Simon, casting a net in the sea. And he said to them, come follow me. Eyeball to eyeball. Or, he might have texted him if he were here today. Right? But I'm amazed by how much we depend on this sort of group shotgun. And what that says is it's not that important. You better believe when the Boy Scouts are looking for next year's troop master, what's it called? Scoutmaster, they know that 6 months ahead of time. They're not waiting and say, hey, anybody maybe want to sign up? The PTA knows who the next person's going to be. So here are the rules. Leaders don't typically volunteer. They're invited. Recruit one at a time. If no one responds to your plea in the bulletin, you're right on schedule. Chances are the people you want are already involved in a ministry somewhere else in the church, and they are very happy there. You don't have to pull them away, but what you can do is let them know you're not giving up and that you're coming back every year until they say yes. I've had people say, I'm so glad you asked me because the school wanted me to be in charge of the Harvest Festival, and I so didn't want to do that. But I could say, I promised my pastor. Right? Don't rob them of that opportunity. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. I can't tell you how many times I've sat with people who said, well, they'll say no. There's no way. They say no to everything. I'm sure they'll say no. Well, doesn't hurt to ask. If they're going to, it usually takes 8 no's to get to a yes, so let's go ahead and get that one out of the way. It's only 7 more to go. Great. Okay, so in case you're looking for great devotional material, This is the book we've got that has this process in it. So here we go. I'm going to walk you through this recruiting process. We say you start with partners, not helpers. So a helper, so my mom dies, you come to my house, and you're a helper. What's the last thing you say on the way out the door? See you later, and call me if you need me. Who's got responsibility to take the next step? The grieving son, right? Now, nothing wrong with helpers. Sometimes that's all we can be. But you can't build a ministry on helpers. If you're a partner and you come to my house, and my mom's just died, what do you say? I'll see you tomorrow. So you own responsibility for the next text. What else might you say?
Here's what I need you to do.
Yeah. You could say, how about you do this before I come back and I can do this, right? It could be, listen, I got the kids' rides to school for the next week. I'm arranging meals for the next week. My wife had cancer about 5 years ago. April 1st is her end of the 5 years. Not that we're counting her anyway. So happy April Fool's Day. But when she got her cancer diagnosis, bam, there was food at our house. Those were partners. We didn't organize. Somebody just said, I've organized a food train for you, and something will be at your house every day. Just don't cook for the next month, right? That's a partner. Somebody who owns responsibility to take the next step. We usually build models of youth ministry with what I call the genius and a million helpers. And we just say, can you help me? So every time you want to do something, you have to recruit all over again, right? So we're going to start with partners. And step one is you just list all the partners you need. I need 3 people to go to camp. I need 2 Sunday school teachers. I need 3, we have 3 big events every year. I need 3 event coordinators, whatever your things might be. I need somebody to do food once a month for a youth group, and I need somebody to coordinate our transportation when we do field trips. Just make your list of all. You do each of those, you put a line next to it with the blank. Okay? Is that all pretty straightforward? You're just making a list of needs. How many phone calls have you made so far? How many people have you accosted in the parking lot? Okay, here we go. Here's the next one. Then you create a pool. You want to have your pool be about 3 times larger than your needs list. So if you need 10 people, how many people do you want on your pool? You got to come up with 30 names. Now, sometimes you might have to reach outside the church. There's sometimes people will, like there might be a parent who doesn't, the kid comes, but the parent doesn't come. Well, it's all right. We're not asking them to, lead the Bible study, but they can cook spaghetti. It's sort of theologically agnostic, right? Spaghetti is. Depends on if you're Italian, Catholic, or, okay. But you're going to make a list of 30. You'll be able to come up with about 10 of those by yourself, and then you're just going to have to go around and source. Who do you know that might have gifts for this? That could take a while. You just keep asking, but don't make a phone call, don't send an email until you get all the names on that list. You get 3 times as many as your needs list. Does that make sense? Here's the next one. Then you rank them, similar to what we did on the paper. In this column, you give them an A, B, C. A is they be awesome. C is only in a pinch. All right? Then over in this column, you give them a W-E-B, web. So it has all kind of meaning. With kids is the W. B is behind the scenes. And E is either one. Some people should not be with kids. They'll drive them away. They're kid repellent. But they want to help. Keep them in the kitchen. Let them plan an event. Let them manage registration, right? So with kids, either one, behind the scenes. So you've ranked them. Okay, we good? Does that all still feel straightforward? Okay. The next piece is you match them. So you pull off of this list. If you need a Sunday school teacher, what are you looking for from your ranked list? You want a W or an E. And what do you want in the ABC column? You want an A, right? So we're going to get our best A. We're going to drop it over on this list. Write that name in. How many phone calls have you made? Yeah. This is part of the problem is we just rush after it and try to recruit one random person at a time. Get the whole picture, and you want to just make sure you can field your team, right? So you're going to fill out this thing, because, you know, if you're in charge of your ministry, any blank has your name in it, right? So then you're going to put a name in each of those slots. Okay, now comes the hard part. Now you're going to start making the calls. I'd like to suggest that instead of calls, you start with an email, no more than 3 sentences. A lot of times I've seen people send these emails that are like 7 paragraphs. Young people today are so important. David Elkind says that this is a stage of life when, and it's a long thing. All you want to say is, I'm putting together my team for next year's youth ministry, and I would love for you to be a part of it. Any chance we could talk about it? Now, here's what's going to happen when you send that email. Y'all tell me, what's going to happen? Nothing. They're going to ignore you, and you're going to say, yes. You're going to say, right on track. That's what DeVries said would happen. They will ignore you. You're going to send another email the next week. And you're going to say, hey, I know life's crazy. I'm just following up from an email last week. I wonder if you might be interested. I'm putting together, I have 3 people I'd like to have helping with our junior high kids, and you're one of them. What's the possibility we can talk about it? What are they going to do? They're going to ignore you. Then you're going to maybe make a phone call, leave them a voicemail. You're going to send a text. Then at some point, they won't be able to avoid you. They're going to see you at church. And what are they going to say? First thing out of their mouth, what are they going to say? I'm so sorry. You've tenderized this steak. It is ready. They come to you sort of, how can I make it up to you? Have I got a deal for you? I can show you how to make it up for me, blowing me off 8 times I reached out to you. But you're going to go 8 contacts. People say, how many times should I try before I give up? 8. 8 is good. It usually takes 8 no's to get to a yes. Let's just try it. If they do it faster than that, line up all your friends, sing the doxology. It'll be great. Okay? And then so the process is you're going to follow up. When somebody says no, where are you going? Back to my pool list. Finding the next person. I'm going to drop them in that slot. When they say no, you notice I said when, not. When they say no, you're not going to, have a big negative reaction like, well, if you don't care if kids go to hell, I don't, I'm glad I don't have to be you when I die. I don't. You just give them love and say, I didn't think you'd be able to do it this year, but just know I'm coming back next year. You're just, because here's the beautiful thing. Once you get your team in place, they're going to have such a good experience that they're not going to want to quit. You'll lose about 20% a year. You have a very small pool to recruit the next year. But the first time out, man, it takes some work. So you just work this process. 2 hours a week for 6 months, 2 hours a day for 1 month, right? You just sort of work it out. But that's kind of the plan there. I did want to I know we're close to wrapping up. It occurs to me that with the both with the volunteer stuff and with all the system stuff, we've created this tool that allows you to do sort of an evaluation of how your ministry is doing relative to the systems. So if you want to just, you have to sign up and say if you want to do it by yourself or you want your team to do it. And then typically one of our folks will have a 15-minute conversation with you just to talk it through. So if that's of interest to you, just take a picture of that and put it in. Okay, questions, comments, tacky gestures about recruiting volunteers?
Make it sound easy.
Yeah. Well, here's the deal. It's not complicated. It's just hard, right? Running a marathon is not complicated. It's just hard. You'd put in the training, and most people that start to train for a marathon end up running a marathon. You can do this in an ugly way. You can win ugly here. It's okay. Other questions before Jill takes over?
One more question.
So thinking about your first picture up there that we used as sort of the icebreaker, right? And the idea of burnout. And thinking about this method of volunteer building, I'll say, or recruitment, one of the things that we're looking at in our church leadership structure right now, in terms of the leaders who are burning out, one of the things we've been discussing is the idea of passion, right? Yeah. And there are people who do intense amounts of work, but don't feel that burnout because they've taken on a thing they're passionate about, versus the people who are like, oh, we're desperate as a church. We really, we have to have somebody in the building maintenance role or whatever. You get what I'm saying.
Right.
In that difference between the sort of runner's high of I'm so exhausted, but I feel so good from being exhausted, versus I'm so exhausted and I just can't anymore. Yeah. But the model you just proposed is I'm gonna convince you what your passion is, right? So can you talk a little bit more about that step in sort of matchmaking or adjusting the program for your pool, right? How you come up with your pool and knowing your people, and that differential between we as a program need this, but you as a volunteer need this.
Right. Oh, that's such a great. That gets right at it. The truth is, we're going to miss it. We're gonna have people, and they're going to realize pretty early on youth ministry is not their calling. But at some level, though, this is a fundamental ministry of the church that the church has already taken vows for, and I don't particularly feel gifted to take out the trash, right? But sometimes I'm going to take out the trash, right? And so for us to own the fact that we got to have a team in place for our kids, and sometimes that's going to be a match for their natural gifts, and sometimes they're just filling a slot to help provide the kind of care. Some people would say, I don't have the gift for parenting, but they've got 7. We don't wait for them to. We don't only have, as parents, people who have that gift, My experience, though, has been that as we work this process, what will happen is the people for whom there is this runner's high, for whom this is their passion, will stay. Those who don't will rotate out until 80 or 90% are the ones that kind of have that passion. The problem, what I've seen, though, in a lot of churches, is we say, well, I don't want to put this on anybody, and so that means we don't have a team, and so the kids are robbed of the possibility of being surrounded by godly adults. I just tend to say the congregation's already committed to this. It's part of their role in the Christian nurture of the children. But I do think we can do a better job. I've just seen too many churches be stuck waiting for exactly the right person. Like, who feels called to sleep on a gym floor for 6 nights in the summer in 93-degree heat? Anyone? But there is, I've had very few adults go on a mission trip with kids and leave saying, man, I wish I hadn't done that. They say, I'm really tired. I don't know if I'm going to ever do it again, but man, there's nothing quite like having a front row seat on transformation in kids' lives. We're sort of wired to be awakened by it. All of us, I think, to be awakened by that. So I danced around your question, but yes, I think you're right. Can I do one last video and then we'll wrap up? Is that okay? Because I just want to give you a lasting picture of the work you're about so you can enjoy it. Here we go.
This man right here is my great-grandfather. He's the first cat herder in our family.
Herding cats. Don't let anybody tell you it's easy. Anybody can herd cattle. Holding together 10,000 half-wild short hairs, well, that's another thing altogether.
Being a cat herder is probably about the toughest thing I think I've ever done.
I got this one this morning, right here, and if you look at his face, it's just ripped to shreds, you know?
You see the movies, you hear the stories, I'm living a dream. Not everyone can do what we do.
I wouldn't do nothing else.
It ain't an easy job, but when you bring a herd into town and you ain't lost a one of them, ain't a feeling like it in the world.
As we hand it back over to Jill, may you know the sweetness of that. When you bring a herd into town, you ain't lost a one of them. Ain't a feeling like it in the world. Jill?
Folks, can we give Mark a round of applause?
Yeah.